What happens when a billionaire dad forces a school principal to admit his underqualified son into the nation's most elite prep academy, without even taking the admission test? You might think you know how this story ends, but what if I told you one sentence changed everything? You don't know the work we've done to earn this. Don't come in here stomping like this is yours by birthright. That line didn't just silence a spoiled heir, it triggered a chain reaction that flipped an entire institution on its head. This story is about privilege, pressure, and a prodigy no one saw coming. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The mahogany doors of the Harvard Preparatory Academy office creaked open, revealing a room soaked in opulence, leather chairs, golden plaques, and rows of degrees framed along the crimson walls. At the center sat Principal Lionel Hargrove, a tall, stately man with salt and pepper hair and a stare that had made generations of students and parents alike rethink their confidence. A quiet storm resided behind his composed expression, and his office wasn't unfamiliar with controversy. But this was different. Opposite him sat Walter Kensington III, a man who walked like he owned the earth beneath him, and in most cases, he did. A billionaire tech mogul with a smirk that stretched farther than his reach, Walter rested his elbows on the principal's desk, making no effort to hide the entitlement that dripped from every syllable. "You know who I am," Walter said smoothly, brushing imaginary dust off his Italian blazer. "My son, Braden, deserves a future here at Harvard Prep. He doesn't need to be tested to prove it." Lionel didn't flinch. "This school has never made exceptions for entry requirements, Mr. Kensington." Walter leaned forward, his tone dropping an octave. "Well, you're about to." He reached into his coat pocket and slid across a platinum-embossed checkbook, casually flipping it open. "Tell me your number." Lionel eyed the checkbook, his face unreadable. "You think I'd sell my standards for a donation?" "Not a donation," Walter corrected. "A partnership. My company, Kensington Future Tech, is about to sponsor elite STEM programs across Ivy League schools. Harvard Prep could be next. That is, if you're willing to show a little flexibility." The tension hung heavy in the air like rain before a storm. At that exact moment, the heavy office door creaked again. Standing just outside was a thin young boy with honey-brown skin, close-cropped hair, and a satchel slung across his shoulder. 13-year-old Ellis Freeman didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the voices were loud, and curiosity got the better of him. Ellis was the top student in 8th grade, a prodigy in coding and engineering. But it wasn't enough. Not here. Not where names carried more weight than merit. Inside the office, Principal Hargrove sighed, his voice low. "This isn't how we do things, Mr. Kensington." "No," Walter replied, "it's how the world does things. Let me simplify. You admit my son today. No test. No essays. Just his name and my backing. Or I move my money elsewhere. That's simple enough." There was a long pause. Lionel closed his eyes for a second before pressing the intercom on his desk. "Miss Rivera, send in Ellis Freeman." Walter arched a brow. "What's this?" "A demonstration," Lionel said coolly. Ellis entered, unsure of what he was walking into but aware enough to stand straight and steady. "Ellis," Principal Hargrove said, "this is Mr. Kensington. He's considering investing in the school. I want you to show him your recent design, the autonomous drone project you submitted last week." Ellis blinked, surprised but not unprepared. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a tablet, tapping swiftly to bring up the blueprints. "I reverse-engineered a tripropeller drone with solar tracking capabilities. It can adjust its flight angle to maximize charge efficiency midair. It's designed for climate monitoring over rainforest canopies." Walter's mouth parted, the smugness faltering slightly. "You're 13. Ellis nodded. "Yes, sir. I built a prototype at home using salvaged parts." Where'd you learn that? Walter asked. Taught myself. I use open source software and write in Python, C++, and a little JavaScript. You should be in a lab. I'd love to be, Ellis replied simply. But we don't all get that kind of access. Lionel turned to Walter, his gaze steady. This is what real merit looks like. This boy earned his spot through grit, not a bank account. Walter, visibly rattled, leaned back. Cute presentation. But my son isn't trying to build toys. He belongs here. So does Ellis, Lionel said. And if you're serious about supporting innovation, why not support the students who drive it? Walter laughed dryly. You're using this kid to make a point. No, Lionel said, I'm giving you a choice. Back your son's spot with money, or back this school's future with students who deserve it. For a moment, silence ruled the room. Ellis stood there, quiet, composed, yet burning with an intensity neither man could ignore. Walter looked at him again, slower this time. Something unreadable flickered across his face. I'll think about it, he muttered, grabbing his coat. Do that, Lionel said, rising. Because next time, bring more than a checkbook. As the door shut behind Walter, Ellis turned to Lionel. Was that, okay? Lionel smiled, finally. More than okay. You reminded a man of power what real power looks like. And outside in the hallway, Walter Kensington walked slower than before, the image of a self-taught black kid and his rainforest drone playing over and over in his mind like a glitch in a system he thought he controlled. The next day at Harvard Preparatory Academy began with an uncomfortable stillness. Whispers floated through the halls like wind through brittle leaves. Everyone had heard something, but nobody knew exactly what. By the third period, however, the rumor had a name, Braden Kensington. The billionaire's son had been admitted. No exams. No essays. No interviews. Just a signature and a shadow over every deserving student who'd fought tooth and nail for their spots. Ellis Freeman sat at the edge of his new computer science lab, technically the robotics club's storage room, but Principal Hargrove had repurposed it for Ellis autonomous projects. He had earned the space by outscoring even high school seniors in math and logic assessments, yet today, it felt less like an honor and more like a battleground. Because today, Braden walked in. Tall for 13, with sleek blonde hair and an air of permanent disinterest, Braden strolled into the room like it was a stage meant for him. This is the nerd cave, he muttered, looking around. Ellis didn't respond. He adjusted the small microcontroller chip on his desk. I said, this is the nerd cave. Braden repeated, louder. It's the robotics lab, Ellis replied, without looking up. Whatever. Braden dumped his designer backpack onto the floor. Heard you were some kind of genius. I work hard. That's what poor people say when they don't have talent. Ellis turned now. Talent without discipline is noise. You looking to build something or just talk? That jab landed. Braden scoffed but didn't have a comeback. He circled the lab with half-interest, glancing at parts he didn't recognize and monitors that flickered with graphs he didn't understand. He finally stopped at a table with an incomplete drone model. What's this junk supposed to be? An aerial wildfire detector. Looks like something out of a cereal box. That's because it's made of recycled packaging. I made it cost-effective. But I can break it down for you if the science is too much. Braden flinched as if slapped. You got a mouth on you, huh? Ellis didn't respond. He reached for a soldering iron. This place won't be fun for you if you keep acting like you own it, Ellis said quietly, not looking up. And I won't be the only one who lets you know. Braden snorted. Like you scare me. Ellis looked at him then, not with fear, but with clarity. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to warn you. You don't know the work we've done to earn this. Don't come in here stomping like this is yours by birthright. Not every door will stay open just because your dad kicks it down. Braden didn't reply. Something about the way Ellis spoke, the calm fire behind the words, threw him off. The bell rang, and Braden grabbed his bag, pausing at the door. "You think you're better than me?" "I think I've had to be," Ellis answered. "And you just walked into the deep end. Learn to swim." Braden left without another word, but Ellis could tell it wouldn't be the last of him. That evening, Walter Kensington received a phone call from his son. "That Freeman kid," Braden said. "He's different." "Different how?" Walter asked, distracted as usual. "He doesn't care who I am. Or you." Walter froze mid-sip of his scotch. "That's unfortunate." "Or maybe," Braden added slowly, "that's what makes him interesting." Walter leaned back, suddenly unsettled by something he couldn't name. His son's voice had never sounded uncertain before. Not until today. Ellis Freeman hadn't just built machines, he'd started dismantling an empire of arrogance. One quiet circuit at a time. 2 weeks after Braden Kensington's controversial admission to Harvard Preparatory Academy, the temperature inside the school hadn't cooled, it had boiled. The faculty didn't talk about it directly, but students weren't as tactful. Side eyes followed Braden in the hallways. A few even muttered, "cheater," or "legacy leech," under their breath as he passed. Most of them had studied for years for the entrance exam he never took. They weren't forgiving. Ellis Freeman didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His presence in the robotics lab after school each day, tight-lipped, focused, determined, was its protest. The injustice hadn't broken him. It had sharpened him. And strangely, it seemed to be doing the same to Braden. "Why are you always in here?" Braden asked one afternoon, flopping into the chair across from Ellis, who didn't even glance up from his wiring. "Don't you have friends?" "I'm building a failsafe for wildfire sensor overrides. Requires calibration," Ellis answered dryly. "Have you ever said, 'hi,' like a normal human?" "I tried that once. They mistook me for someone average." Braden snorted, a half-laugh he hadn't meant to let out. "Man, you are weird." Ellis paused. "So leave." But Braden didn't. He watched in silence for a few moments, then pulled something from his backpack, a disassembled drone motor. "I tried to rebuild one of those kits my dad got me. It sparked. Burned the table." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Which part did you connect wrong?" Braden hesitated. "The, blue wire. I think. There are 3 blue wires," Ellis said, finally setting down his tools. "You want to actually learn this, or just keep frying stuff for fun?" "I want to learn," Braden said, quieter this time. "But not from books. Not from old guys in bow ties. From you." Ellis studied him a moment longer. "Why?" Braden met his eyes. "Because you're the only person in this school who doesn't care who my dad is. You actually know what you're doing. I've never met anyone like that." Ellis didn't respond right away. Eventually, he stood, pulled over a spare chair, and turned his monitor toward Braden. "Then start taking notes. I don't repeat myself." Wordlessly, Braden pulled out a notebook. From that day forward, Braden showed up to the robotics lab every afternoon. Not with swagger or entitlement, but with quiet attention. The same kid who used to treat the world like a prop now held wires with careful fingers. He asked questions. Dumb ones, smart ones, frustrated ones, but honest ones. Ellis didn't go easy on him. "You reversed the polarity again," Ellis said on day 4. Braden groaned. "It's like alien math. It's logic. Not magic. You're just not used to earning things." Braden stiffened. "That's fair." Ellis softened. "But you're here. That matters." Outside the lab, though, no one else had seen the shift. They still saw Braden as the kid who bought his way in, and they saw Ellis as the boy who got stepped over. One Friday, during a student STEM showcase in the gymnasium, that perception exploded. Each student team had a table. There were 3D printed cities, coding apps, and homemade telescopes. Ellis had prepared a demo of his wildfire drone. He'd even let Braden help with the final assembly, though the programming remained Ellis's domain. But when they arrived, their table had been sabotaged. The drone's propellers were snapped off, and wires hung like limp nerves. Around them, students smirked behind their displays. No one spoke, but the message was clear. Braden's face turned red. "They think I'm the reason you don't belong." Ellis didn't react. He set down his bag and began gathering the broken pieces. "You're not gonna say anything?" Braden asked. "This is messed up." "I don't waste time on people who are threatened by talent," Ellis said calmly. "I just make sure next time, they can't ignore it." He pulled out a spare motor. A second set of propellers. Backup wires. Within minutes, he was rebuilding the drone. Braden jumped in, aligning the parts they could salvage. Together, they soldered and programmed. The crowd watched, some amused, others curious. An hour later, their drone lifted off, steady, humming, alive. Ellis didn't announce it. He just piloted it toward the ceiling, where its infrared sensor locked onto the gym lights, simulating a heat zone. A screen on their table displayed real-time location data and projected wildfire spread, based on coded algorithms Ellis had written from scratch. Gasps followed. Then applause. Even a few teachers murmured among themselves, eyebrows raised. Principal Hargrove, who'd been walking the floor quietly, stepped forward and stopped at their table. "Impressive," he said. Ellis nodded. "Braden helped assemble this one." Hargrove looked at Braden, who wasn't used to being acknowledged for actual work. "Good," the principal said. "Keep learning. From the right people." As Hargrove walked away, Braden turned to Ellis. "You didn't have to mention me. You did the work. You wanted to earn it, right?" Braden nodded, swallowing something in his throat. That night, Walter Kensington sat in his office, sipping wine, when his phone buzzed. A video had gone viral among Harvard prep parents, a clip of Ellis and Braden rebuilding a drone live in front of half the school. The caption read, "Genius builds. Legacy learns." Walter watched it twice. Then 3 times. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Not pride. Respect. But the storm was just beginning. Because the board was about to call. And not everyone wanted to see Ellis succeed. Especially those who had everything to lose when merit replaced money. Inside the walnut-paneled boardroom of Harvard Preparatory Academy, the temperature was colder than the central air system could account for. 12 trustees sat at the table, donors, legacies, and academic gatekeepers, faces pulled tight with practiced civility and hidden agendas. At the head sat Dr. Meredith Van Doren, chair of the board and granddaughter of the Academy's founder. In her starched white blazer and silk scarf, she looked like someone who hadn't heard the word "no" since the Reagan era. Principal Lionel Hargrove stood alone at the front, a folder in hand, facing the silent wall of privilege. He already knew what this was. The tone of the email, the mandatory performance review, the veiled words like maintaining tradition and admissions integrity, it all pointed to one thing: someone was threatened. And someone had made a call. "We've reviewed the footage circulating on social media," Van Doren said, folding her manicured hands. "The drone demonstration." "Yes," Hargrove answered. "An impressive moment. It reflects the best of what we strive for, innovation, collaboration," Van Doren interrupted. "Yes, well, that's precisely the issue, isn't it?" Hargrove tilted his head. "You'll have to explain that." Another trustee leaned forward, an older man with a face like sandpaper and a last name that belonged on half the buildings on campus. "Principal Hargrove, there's growing concern about the optics of recent events. Particularly regarding your decision to feature a student like Ellis Freeman so prominently. You mean the student who designed a real-time wildfire detection drone? Hargrove asked. He's talented, no doubt, Van Doren said quickly, but Harvard Prep isn't a vocational academy. We groom world leaders here. We have protocols for a reason. Admissions must remain exclusive, competitive. Ellis earned his place through merit. The same can't be said for the boy whose father bought his admission. A few faces flinched. Van Doren narrowed her eyes. Watch your tone, Principal. Hargrove stepped forward, undeterred. Ellis Freeman represents the very excellence this institution claims to uphold. He's outperforming every student in his grade, some in the grades above. His work ethic, discipline, and innovation outclass our legacy students, including Mr. Kensington's son. There it was. The name that shouldn't have been said aloud. That boy's father has pledged over $5 million to this school's future, one trustee barked. Are you suggesting we insult that generosity? I'm suggesting we stop selling our souls for it, Hargrove said, voice tight with control. Van Doren's voice dropped to a velvet whisper, the kind that cuts sharper than a shout. You've overstepped. And this isn't your classroom. It's governance. Decisions here affect more than one promising child. They affect legacy. Rankings. Reputation. Hargrove closed the folder in his hand and placed it on the table. Then let's talk about reputation. Do you want to be known as the school that nurtures brilliance, or buries it under donations? That video of Ellis and Braden doing real-time innovation has been viewed over 400,000 times. Parents are calling. Educators are reaching out. That's not a scandal, it's a signal. A signal to whom? A trustee sneered. People who can't afford the tuition. Is that who you're looking to bring in now? Something shifted in the room. Hargrove straightened. Yes. If they've earned it. Silence. Van Doren spoke again. We are not discussing Ellis Freeman's merit. We are discussing your judgment. Your tendency to make unsanctioned decisions. You featured Freeman in public events, bypassed communications, even allowed a non-qualified student, Braden Kensington, to pair with him, risking the optics of favoritism. The optics of favoritism were clear the moment Braden was admitted without an exam, Hargrove said. You think you're righteous, Van Doren said coldly. But you're political. You're a liability, Lionel. Hargrove nodded slowly. So be it. If telling the truth makes me a liability, then at least I'm not another silent guardian of the status quo. Van Doren leaned back in her chair. Consider this your warning. I don't need warnings, Hargrove replied. I need your attention. Because if you keep ignoring talent like Ellis Freeman, this institution will rot from the top down. And the donors won't save you from that headline. Meanwhile, Ellis and Braden sat on opposite ends of the robotics lab. The air between them had changed. Braden looked up. My dad called today. Ellis didn't look away from his tablet. Did he say something about the showcase? Braden nodded. He saw the video. Said it wasn't great for our image. He doesn't like me working with you. Ellis snorted. Then quit. Braden leaned back in his chair. I won't. Ellis finally glanced up. Why? Braden looked away. Because I learn more in here than I ever did in any of his boardrooms. And for once, I'm not getting handed something. I'm building it. I like who I am in this room. Ellis held his stare a moment, then returned to his screen. Good. Then get better. Your code's still sloppy. Braden grinned. Working on it. At that moment, Principal Hargrove stepped into the lab, looking tired but fierce. Gentlemen, he said. How do you feel about entering the State Robotics Invitational next month? Braden's eyes widened. U.S. Ellis blinked. We're not on the list. Hargrove held up a form. You are now. I signed you up myself. Let's show them what happens when you stop testing privilege and start testing brilliance. As the boys looked at each other, one legacy, one outlier, something electric passed between them. Not friendship. Not yet. But purpose. Because they both knew the storm wasn't over. The board had made their threat clear. But now, they had something bigger than revenge. They had proof. And they were going to let it fly, in front of every gatekeeper still clutching their keys. The Glenridge State Robotics Invitational was no playground. It was war, fought with gears, code, and brains sharpened like blades. 48 elite middle and high school teams from across the state had gathered in a glimmering tech arena on the edge of Cambridge, each hungry for the championship title and the scholarships that came with it. These weren't after-school tinkerers. These were prep school prodigies, coached by MIT graduates and funded by alumni foundations. And right in the middle of the arena floor stood Team 63, Freeman and Kensington. Their table looked modest next to the chrome-plated booths of other teams. Ellis had refused any sponsorship logos. He wore a plain black hoodie and jeans. Braden, too, wore school neutrals, no branding, no flash. Just resolve. The two stood over a black toolbox and a compact drone rig dubbed Halley, short for High Altitude Light Interceptor. It was their newest prototype, fitted with dual-layer heat sensors, live GPS mapping, and Ellis's custom predictive software that could analyze climate variables in real time. But even before the matches began, the whispers started. Isn't that the Billionaire's kid? That's the Freeman kid. The one from that viral video. Didn't they rig their entry? Ellis didn't respond. He'd heard all of it before, at Harvard Prep, at regional STEM expos, even online in anonymous comment threads. Some people couldn't imagine a black boy in a hoodie leading a robotics build unless he was being helped. But Braden? He heard it differently now. It stung in a way that no insult ever had before. Just ignore it, Ellis said, eyes locked on their drone's diagnostic readout. Braden clenched his jaw. No. I want to earn this. Let's shut them up. The first round pitted them against Newton Technics, a sleek team of 4 whose robot resembled a miniature tank with retractable claws. The challenge: retrieve 3 data pods from a maze filled with heat traps and decoy signals, then upload them to a virtual server. Speed and accuracy determined the ranking. Braden positioned the drone while Ellis tapped out code sequences on a rugged tablet. When the buzzer rang, Halley launched smoothly into the maze, hovering just below the sensor ceiling. Onlookers gasped as it dipped, dodged, and adjusted midair, realigning its path through infrared deflections that would have triggered false pickups in less sophisticated models. The Newton bot stumbled on a decoy pod. Halley mapped it instantly, flagged the false frequency, and pivoted. Within 6 minutes, it retrieved all 3 pods and beamed its data into the virtual terminal, first in its heat. New record, the announcer said, astonished. Team 63 advances. As applause rippled across the floor, a judge approached. A man in his 50s with silver hair and an uptight posture. He eyed their drone with thinly veiled skepticism. You boys build this? Ellis looked up. From scratch. Interesting. And the code? I wrote it, Ellis replied, tapping the tablet. Want to see the logs? The judge hesitated, then moved along. But not before shooting them a look that said this isn't over. Round after round, Halley dominated. By the 5th heat, it had become the competition's dark horse. Some teams looked impressed. Others, agitated. A few began filing official complaints, alleging inaccessible advantages, possible unauthorized components, or even, laughably, out-of-age-range design sophistication. One coach, a wiry man from the Concord Academy team, stormed up to the judge's table mid-round. There's no way that Black Kid and Kensington's heir did all that alone. Ellis heard it. So did Braden. Principal Hargrove, seated in the far bleachers, stood but didn't move. He was used to letting truth speak louder than defense. But Ellis? He was done being quiet. As the final round loomed, Ellis requested that the judges allow a live build. "What's a live build?" one asked. Ellis stood straight. "You give every finalist team the same problem, on the spot. 1 hour. No kits. No assistance. Just code, raw materials, and brains." The floor buzzed with confusion and protest. "That's not in the rulebook," one team lead snapped. "It's not banned either," Ellis said. "And if we're being accused of cheating, then prove it. Give everyone the same start line." The head judge stepped forward. "Are you certain you want this?" Ellis didn't flinch. "We are." Braden nodded beside him, heart racing. They called it the blind sprint, each team given identical starter components, a microcontroller, heat sensor, 2 rotors, and a challenge: build a device that could locate a thermal leak inside a mock server room with changing temperature conditions. Ellis and Braden moved like a machine. No panic. No wasted motion. Braden soldered. Ellis coded. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. 37 minutes in, Braden aligned the rotors. Ellis ran the thermal compensation algorithm. Their build hovered. Pivoted. Paused, then zipped into the test cube. 30 seconds later, it blinked green. Found the leak. Ellis uploaded the logs. Transparent. Clean. Auditable. One by one, the other teams failed. Either the builds never lifted, or the sensors misread the false data nodes planted to trip them. When the final results flashed on the board, the arena fell silent before the crowd erupted. First place, Team 63, Freeman and Kensington. They had done it. And this time, no one could say it was gifted. Or luck. Or bought. Because in front of judges, cameras, skeptics, and the bloodthirsty hierarchy of elite academic competition, they had outthought, outbuilt, and outlasted everyone, under scrutiny so severe it would have cracked lesser minds. As the crowd poured out, Walter Kensington arrived late, escorted by an assistant in a panic. He spotted his son in the center of the floor, drenched in sweat, grinning next to a trophy he hadn't paid for. Ellis stood beside him, straight-backed, tablet in hand. Walter approached, unsure what to say. "I saw the live stream," he began, addressing Braden. "That was impressive." Braden nodded. Ellis led. Walter shifted to Ellis. "I owe you an apology." Ellis met his gaze calmly. "No, you owe the world a better system." Walter blinked. Ellis continued, "You used your power to open a door that should have stayed closed. Now your son's finally earning his way through it. That's the real win." Walter swallowed hard. For the first time in his career, he was being taught, not by a professor, or a CEO, but a kid who had every right to hate him. He didn't. He just told the truth. And that left Walter Kensington speechless. But not for long. Because the world was watching now. And Harvard Prep was about to face a reckoning. Monday at Harvard Preparatory Academy felt different. Tense. A hum of unfinished business crackled through the hallways like static. Posters from the Robotics Invitational win had already been plastered near the entrance, but the congratulations were hollow. Carefully worded announcements. Selective emails. Polished press blurbs that minimized what couldn't be denied. The truth was this: 2 boys, 1 billionaire's son and 1 underestimated black prodigy, had embarrassed the very system that tried to box them in. They'd earned their victory in full view. And that made some very powerful people uncomfortable. Principal Hargrove stood in his office once again, holding a thick envelope hand-delivered that morning by a school courier. The seal on it wasn't the school's, it was the board's. And he didn't need to open it to know what was coming. He sat at his desk, fingers hovering over the letter. Then he picked up his phone and called Ellis. Ellis Freeman had never been inside the principal's office under positive circumstances, until now. But even this visit was layered with uncertainty. He sat upright across from Hargrove's desk, Braden beside him, their robotics trophy resting in Braden's lap like an offering neither boy knew where to place. "I wanted you both to hear this directly from me," Principal Hargrove said, folding his hands. Braden tensed. "Is this about the tournament?" "No," Hargrove said slowly. "It's about me." He held up the envelope. "The board delivered this today. A formal review. They're initiating proceedings to have me removed." Ellis sat very still. "Because of us." "Because I refuse to apologize for you," Hargrove said. "They're calling it professional misalignment with the school's long-term vision." Braden's face darkened. "They're punishing you for letting us compete." "They're punishing me," Hargrove said, "because we won." The room went quiet. Then Ellis leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Hargrove looked at him. "You keep building. Keep working. I'll handle the fight in the boardroom." But Braden had already stood up, clutching the trophy. "No," he said. "Not this time. If they come for you because of us, then they're coming for all of us. We're not hiding." Ellis nodded slowly. "We speak. Publicly." Principal Hargrove blinked. "That might not help." "It won't help them," Ellis said. "That's the point." By that evening, Ellis had finished what would become the most viewed open letter in Harvard Prep's history. He posted it on the school's internal forum, but within minutes, screenshots flooded social media. Thousands read it. Tens of thousands shared it. And by sunrise, it had broken into education networks nationwide. An open letter to the gatekeepers. "My name is Ellis Freeman. I am 13 years old. I attend Harvard Preparatory Academy, a place I earned a seat in through achievement. Not legacy. Not a donation. Not favors. Last week, my partner Braden Kensington and I competed at the Glenridge State Robotics Invitational. We won, not because we were privileged, but because we were prepared. We built something real. And in doing so, we exposed something broken. What we face now is not academic evaluation. It is institutional fear. Fear that talent can't be controlled. Fear that a system built to reward wealth is being redefined by merit. Fear that people like me, who don't come from billion-dollar names, can't be ignored anymore. If Principal Hargrove is punished for protecting fairness, then Harvard Prep is telling the world its values are for sale. We won't be silent. And we're not leaving. Sincerely, Ellis Freeman, student. Builder. Unbought. That same morning, Braden published his own short post beneath Ellis's letter. "I was given a seat I didn't earn. Ellis gave me a standard to live up to. I stand with him." Braden K*****. The impact was immediate. Students flooded the forum with supportive comments. Some posted videos of Ellis working late hours in the lab. Others shared their own frustrations about overlooked applications, favoritism, and unfair policies. A group of faculty sent a collective petition to the board demanding that Principal Hargrove remain in his post. Even a few alumni chimed in, including a former Rhodes Scholar who wrote, "This is the leadership our schools should be nurturing, not punishing." By midday, the local news had picked up the story. By that night, CNN had. Inside his penthouse office overlooking the Boston skyline, Walter Kensington stared at his phone, watching Ellis' letter scroll across the television screen. He felt two conflicting things rising in his chest. Shame. And pride. Not for himself. For his son. For the boy he once tried to bulldoze a future for, now standing tall beside someone who refused to be bulldozed. He called his assistant. "Get me Meredith Van Doren. You want to speak to the board chair." Walter's voice was calm. Cold. Clear. "No. I want to buy the board chair." 2 days later, Principal Lionel Hargrove walked back into the boardroom. Same table. Same faces. But the air was different. Before Van Doren could speak, another trustee stood and cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said, we have a motion. Van Doren blinked. A motion for what? To halt your disciplinary review, the trustee said. Effective immediately. You retain your position as principal of Harvard Preparatory Academy. Van Doren looked stunned. On what grounds? The trustee handed her a paper. Because our largest donor just threatened to pull his funding if we continue targeting the very people he now says represent the future of education. She turned the page. There it was, Walter Kensington's signed declaration. A complete reversal of his earlier stance. Merit must lead, it read. Or we lose everything. Principal Hargrove stood, silent. The board's silence was his vindication. That night, Ellis sat in the robotics lab alone, calibrating Halley's newest sensors. Braden entered quietly, holding 2 sodas. Guess what? He said. They're making the invitational an annual requirement now. Every student has to build something before graduation. Ellis smiled. About time. Braden handed him a soda. You did this, you know. No, Ellis said. We did. And in the quiet hum of circuit boards and whispered code, something irreversible had been set in motion. The system didn't fall. But for the first time in decades, it bent. The following week began with a thunderclap announcement that reverberated across Harvard Preparatory Academy, and far beyond its ivy-covered walls. Effective immediately, Harvard Prep will suspend legacy preference in admissions. It was a single line in an email sent at 6:03 a.m. to faculty, students, and parents. No signature. No elaboration. But those 12 words ruptured a tradition older than the chandeliers in the Great Hall. By noon, it had gone viral. Legacy preference, the unspoken agreement that if your last name was carved into a marble stair or printed on an endowment check, your children needn't prove themselves, was the unchallenged pillar of elite prep school culture. And now, it had been gutted. Not quietly. Not gradually. Immediately. The backlash was instant. Board members fielded dozens of angry calls. Some parents threatened to pull their children out. But they were outnumbered by a wave of support from parents who had always known their brilliant, hard-working kids were passed over for surnames and sponsorships. In classrooms, whispers turned to discussions. In the cafeteria, debate sparked. For the first time, equity wasn't a themed week, it was a reckoning stitched into the school's DNA. And at the center of it all were 2 boys who hadn't asked for any of this. Ellis Freeman stood outside room 317, the advanced computational engineering lab that didn't exist for middle schoolers until last week. His name had been personally added to the roster by Principal Hargrove. It was the highest-level tech course in the school, taught by Dr. Emil Carter, a man with 2 PhDs and a chip on his shoulder. When Ellis stepped in, Dr. Carter barely looked up. Mr. Freeman, I assume. Yes, sir. You'll find the assigned seat in the back. We run real-time simulations here. No catch-up. You'll be expected to match pace immediately. I wouldn't expect anything less. Dr. Carter glanced up at that, the corners of his mouth twitching. Ellis sat. The only black student in a room full of 11th graders. The only one not wearing a team jacket, a tie, or an expression of entitlement. But none of that mattered. He opened his laptop. The moment the problem set was released, a prompt to build a closed-loop system that could predict fluctuations in kinetic thermal outputs, his fingers flew across the keyboard. By the end of the hour, Ellis had submitted the fastest solution. He left the room before anyone else. Meanwhile, Braden sat before a different kind of test. His father, Walter Kensington, had called him into his private study that evening. It wasn't their usual place. No penthouse dining table. No sleek home theater. Just a mahogany room filled with books Braden knew his father had never read. Sit, Walter said. Braden did. I reversed the funding decision, Walter said. Put my name behind the legacy policy change. Braden nodded, unsure what to say. I didn't do it because I believe in any of this yet, Walter continued. I did it because you made me question why I don't. Braden blinked. So, that's a start. Walter leaned forward. It's an experiment. Like the ones you've been building. And like all experiments, I expect results. Braden's jaw tightened. Is this about me proving something to you again? No, Walter said. It's about me learning whether power can be used to undo the damage it built. Braden stared. I see the way you talk about Ellis. The way you look when you come back from that lab. You've never admired anyone before. Braden spoke quietly. He doesn't ask anyone to admire him. That's the difference. Walter nodded. I have one condition, Walter said, rising. If we're going to support this new merit-based future, I want you to prove that you belong in it. Braden stood, shoulders squared. I've been trying to do that every day since I met Ellis. Walter reached into his blazer and handed over a thin manila folder. You'll be applying for the International Junior Engineering Fellowship. No favors. No strings. Ellis already qualifies. You don't. Braden opened the folder. The requirements were stiff: a 2-phase interview, original project submission, and written proposal. Just 60 students worldwide were accepted. He took a deep breath. I'll win it, Braden said. And if I don't, then I'll try again. Walter didn't smile. But he didn't scoff either. Which, for Walter Kensington, was progress. Back on campus, the announcement about legacy suspension set off more than gossip. It exposed fractures, and allies. At lunch, Ellis and Braden found themselves surrounded. Yo, Freeman, a junior named Rashad called out, holding up a tray. You got room at your table? Ellis looked up, surprised. Rashad was a star athlete, but he'd never spoken to Ellis outside of class. Sure, Ellis said cautiously. One by one, more students joined, kids from debate, from the coding club, even 2 seniors who admitted they'd been following the Halley project online. Some came with praise, others with curiosity, but none with pity. Ellis glanced at Braden. This is weird. Braden grinned. This is respect. Ellis blinked. Feels like noise. No, Braden said. It's the sound of a wall cracking. That night, Principal Hargrove sat in his office, reading a new flood of emails. Some praised him. Others threatened lawsuits. But one message stood out. It came from the board. Short and simple. Greater than we were wrong. The boy is special. No more restrictions. Build whatever you want, ****. Lionel Hargrove closed the laptop slowly, leaned back, and exhaled. Then he picked up the phone and called Ellis. The lab is yours, he said. Ellis paused. What do you mean? I mean full use. Budget. Sponsorship. National level guidance. Starting tomorrow, you're not a student with potential anymore. You're a resource. Ellis sat in silence, overwhelmed. Hargrove added one more thing. And when you're ready, you'll teach others. The future had cracked open. But Ellis knew something most of them didn't. This wasn't the end of the story. This was only proof of concept. Because for every gate they'd opened, 10 more waited. And Ellis Freeman was already building the key. Winter settled over Cambridge like a judge's robe, thick, silent, and absolute. Snow lined the sidewalks of Harvard Preparatory Academy, muffling footsteps and sharpening focus. But inside Lab 4C, formerly a neglected supply closet and now christened the Freeman Innovation Lab, the hum of electricity never stopped. Ellis Freeman had transformed it into something none of the faculty expected, not a trophy room, but a testing ground. 3 monitors blinked along the walls. Halogen desk lamps buzzed over soldering pads and schematics. Shelves stacked with parts, some ordered, others scavenged, lined the back wall. The new school-provided equipment remained unopened in its original packaging, while Ellis continued to work with what he built from scratch. He hadn't changed because the system did. He'd changed the system by refusing to. Across from him, Braden sat hunched over a circuit matrix, his fingers blackened from working a delicate transmitter coil. He cursed under his breath and shook his hand. "That thing just bit me." Ellis didn't look up. "You reversed polarity again." Braden muttered, "Someday I'm gonna figure out why every time I think I'm right, I'm wrong. That's how learning works." "No, that's how you work," Braden said. "I learn by falling off cliffs. You learn by building the cliff first." Ellis chuckled. "I build it so I know where to land." The two had grown into a rhythm. Not friendship exactly, but alliance. Ellis didn't forgive how Braden had arrived at Harvard Prep. But he respected how Braden was trying to stay. That mattered more. On Thursday afternoon, Principal Hargrove walked into the lab with two guests in tow, one tall woman in a blazer with a NASA badge on her lapel, and a sharply dressed man in glasses representing the Global Youth Tech Consortium. "This is the student I was telling you about," Hargrove said. Ellis stood, brushing metal shavings from his hoodie. "Ellis Freeman, meet Dr. Sanchez from the Artemis Initiative, and Mr. Leclerc from GYTC. They've both been reviewing your open-source drone codebase and your wildfire predictive algorithms." Dr. Sanchez stepped forward first. "Ellis, we've tested your environmental sensor firmware in one of our high-altitude climate balloons. It held up better than our commercial prototype." Mr. Leclerc added, "Your submission to the Youth Tech Challenge wasn't just top-tier, it broke our evaluation script. The algorithm didn't know how to grade something that accounted for variables that we hadn't considered." Braden tried not to laugh. Ellis's face stayed composed. Dr. Sanchez smiled. "We're extending you an invitation to join a special youth panel advising the Artemis Earth Integration Division. You'll work with engineers designing eco-monitoring systems for planetary applications." Leclerc continued, "And GYTC would like to formally adopt your drone framework as part of our youth engineering curriculum, pending your approval. We'd also like to offer you our Global Youth Genius Grant." Braden's jaw dropped. "Wait, is that the one they give out to only 5 kids in the world each year?" "Correct," Leclerc said. "And Ellis would be our first recipient under the age of 15. Ellis blinked. "Is this a joke?" "No," Dr. Sanchez said, laughing softly. "This is what happens when the world catches up to someone who's been ahead of it." Ellis glanced at Hargrove, who simply nodded. "You earned all of this," Hargrove said. Then he handed Ellis a folder. "And I'd like to propose one more opportunity. For next term, I want you to lead Harvard Prep's first ever mentorship cohort. You'll design the entry pathway. Recruit students. Teach them." Ellis froze. "You want me to teach?" "I want you to elevate," Hargrove said. "Build the program you wish existed for you." Ellis opened the folder. Inside was a title printed in bold, "The Freeman Standard, a fellowship for students of merit." Below that, a single sentence, "Admission based on ingenuity, not pedigree." Braden leaned over. "You've got your standard, man." Ellis didn't say anything. He just swallowed once and nodded. That weekend, the first info session for the Freeman Standard drew students from all over the Boston area. Not just from Harvard Prep, but from public schools, magnet programs, and youth centers. Over 130 students logged in virtually or showed up in person. Ellis stood at the front of the lecture hall. No podium. No suit. Just his tablet and a challenge: "I'm not here to grade you. I'm here to build with you. If you want easy credit, go somewhere else. If you want to work like the world depends on it, welcome." The room stayed silent. Then a slow ripple of applause started from the back. One hand. Then another. Until the entire hall erupted. That night, Principal Hargrove received over 80 applications. Ellis stayed up till 2 a.m. reviewing every single one, carefully, quietly, methodically. Braden eventually crashed on the beanbag in the lab, half snoring with a laptop open on his chest. Ellis, meanwhile, kept going. He wasn't chasing trophies anymore. He was training architects. Because the next gate wouldn't be knocked down by him alone. It would be removed by the very minds he helped shape. One line of code at a time. The spring assembly at Harvard Preparatory Academy was supposed to be a celebration, an elegant affair with ribbon diplomas, headmaster speeches, and an orchestra from the Boston Conservatory playing Vivaldi like the air itself was on a scholarship. Parents arrived in black SUVs and town cars. The stage was pristine, the banners pressed and hanging straight. Everything was designed to reaffirm one thing, that the system was working. But this year, the system wasn't the center. Ellis Freeman was. Not on the stage. Not behind the podium. But in every conversation, every hushed whisper, every excited murmur between students in the crowd. His name carried weight now, not because someone rich gave it status, but because he'd made it undeniable. Principal Hargrove approached the microphone. The room quieted. This year, for the first time in our 137-year history, he began, Harvard Preparatory Academy recognizes innovation as a formal academic distinction, not just participation. Murmurs rolled through the crowd. He continued, the Freeman Standard, led by student Ellis Freeman, has not only reshaped how we identify gifted minds, but how we develop them. This program began with zero funding, zero faculty oversight, and zero precedent. It now has over 200 applicants citywide, and has produced working prototypes already under consideration by multiple STEM foundations. Parents turned to each other in surprise. This year, Hargrove said firmly, our highest student honor goes not to a legacy scholar or a traditional valedictorian. It goes to a builder. A mentor. A mind that forced us to change. He looked out toward the audience. Ellis Freeman, please stand. Ellis, seated in the fourth row in a plain hoodie, froze. He hadn't been told this would happen. He never liked attention. But Braden nudged him, whispering, get up, man. Own it. Ellis stood. And the room rose with him. Not out of obligation. Out of awe. But applause can't drown tension forever. Later that night, in a private meeting upstairs in the Alumni Hall, Meredith Van Doren gathered with the old guard of the board. Her face was flushed, not with embarrassment, but fury. This circus undermines everything we've built, she hissed. Built, one trustee muttered. We protected the ladder. He removed it. Exactly, Van Doren said. And if we let this continue, we won't be an institution, we'll be a public lab for experiments. Another trustee added, applications from legacy families have dropped 17% this semester. You think that's a coincidence? They weren't discussing education. They were discussing loss of control. Van Doren stood. I want oversight over this Freeman program. Immediately. We'll add curricular restrictions, faculty supervision, whatever it takes to ensure we approve the direction. But she didn't expect the voice that rose from the back of the room. I wouldn't advise that, said Walter Kensington. All heads turned. Van Doren scowled. You're not on this committee. No, Walter said, stepping into the light. But my foundation now funds the entire STEM corridor, half the AI curriculum, and the Freeman Standard. Which means you don't control it anymore. You're siding with them now, she said, venomously. I'm not siding with anyone, Walter said. I'm investing in the future. You want to keep betting on your last names? Fine. I'll keep betting on people like Freeman. Van Doren stepped toward him. Do you understand the precedent you're setting? Walter's smile was faint. I'm not setting a precedent. I'm acknowledging reality. And the reality is this, you built a system where wealth passed for excellence. He just proved otherwise. He turned to leave. And the world's watching. That weekend, Ellis met with his new cohort. 30 students from diverse neighborhoods, backgrounds, and schools. Some were brilliant in math. Others in mechanics. A few were raw, awkward, and full of doubt. He saw himself in all of them. Their first project, power without wires. They'd be designing a system that transferred energy across space, based on Nikola Tesla's lost principles, using accessible components, and submitting their results to an open-source community for replication worldwide. Ellis stood at the whiteboard. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "You just have to be curious. And relentless." One girl raised her hand. "What happens if we fail?" Ellis shrugged. "Then we try again. Because every time we fail, we teach the system how to evolve." Braden chimed in from the back, smirking, "And eventually, we don't just fix it. We replace it." Days later, as Ellis walked across the courtyard, he passed by the old admissions office. Its doors were still gold-trimmed, still heavy with tradition. But now, right beside them was a new sign: Freeman Standard Fellowship Office, Room 106. Inquiries welcome. Proof preferred. He stopped, stared at it for a long time. From behind, Principal Hargrove approached quietly. "You've changed us," he said. "I didn't mean to. That's why it worked." Ellis turned, eyes steady. "This isn't the end, is it?" Hargrove smiled. "No, son. This is the start of a generation." What Ellis didn't know, what he couldn't yet see, was that across the country, other schools had begun requesting the Freeman Standard framework. Students in Ohio, Georgia, Oakland, and even Toronto were starting to code wildfire detection systems using his open-source designs. And next year, Harvard Prep would eliminate standardized tests for its incoming STEM applicants, citing demonstrated ability over academic ritual. The ivory ladder hadn't just cracked. It had begun to collapse. And in its place, a bridge. Built by hands no one expected. The sky above Harvard Preparatory Academy was a soft, thunderless gray, hinting at spring rain but not yet ready to fall. It was a Saturday, and for the first time in years, the campus gates were opened not for donors or dignitaries, but for the public. The occasion, the Freeman Standard Summit, not a fundraiser. Not a gala. A showcase. It wasn't held in the Great Hall or the auditorium but in the wide-open Innovation Courtyard, formerly an underused lawn between the Science Building and the Student Union. Now it buzzed with booths, solar-powered kiosks, and student-built exhibits humming with life. Middle schoolers in hoodies stood next to graduate researchers. Parents, tech investors, and education leaders moved shoulder to shoulder with young engineers from all across the city. At the center of it all stood Ellis Freeman, not on a stage, not behind a microphone, but in a circle of kids, one knee on the ground, helping an 11-year-old from Roxbury rewire her circuit board. "You reversed your diodes," Ellis said gently. "Easy fix. Want to see why it matters?" The girl nodded. Ellis handed her a voltmeter, guided her hands, and smiled when the circuit lit up correctly. "Boom," she whispered. "It works. That's what truth looks like," Ellis said. "Something that holds, even under pressure." Nearby, Braden handled questions from a local reporter. "You were admitted here without taking the standard entrance test," the reporter said, carefully neutral. Braden nodded. "Yeah. I came in through the side door. And now you're part of a movement that dismantled that very door." He smiled. "No. We didn't dismantle it. We exposed how small it was, and started building a wider entrance. One where people have to earn it, not own it." The reporter paused. "And your father supports that now?" Braden nodded, more serious. "He's learning. And more importantly, he listens now." The reporter scribbled notes, then turned back toward the courtyard, where the energy was building. At the far edge, a new sign had been installed into the brick archway leading to the lab corridor: greater than innovation without permission, greater than dedicated to those who built before they were believed. In the early evening, Principal Hargrove stepped onto a small outdoor platform to deliver closing remarks. No grand gestures. No lofty words. He looked over the crowd, students, families, city officials, international guests, and simply said, "You all came here expecting a showcase. What you witnessed was a shift. A quiet one. But one that will echo." He paused. For over a century, Harvard Prep told the world what excellence looked like. Today, the world told us back. Applause followed, not thunderous, not forced. Real. Measured. Earned. As Hargrove stepped down, Ellis approached him. "You think they'll keep it going?" Hargrove smiled. "I think you will." That night, in the Freeman lab, now triple its original size, Ellis stood alone. Halley 4.0 hovered gently in test flight. On a nearby table were blueprints for a new solar data relay satellite designed for suborbital launch in partnership with Artemis Initiative. A folder from GYTC lay open, approving funding for Ellis' student-led Code for Clean Air initiative. And beside all of that, a letter. From MIT. Greater than Ellis Freeman, age 13, greater than congratulations. You have been selected for early conditional admission into our School of Engineering under the Horizon Admission Program, *** greater than. We do not usually admit middle school students, greater than, but we also don't usually meet Ellis Freeman. He folded the letter quietly. No smile. Just a small breath. Because in the end, this wasn't about a school. It wasn't about Harvard Prep, or MIT, or a trophy. It was about something deeper. Worth, undeniable. Unbought. And for the first time in a world that tried to measure him in silence, Ellis Freeman had rewritten the scale. Outside, the courtyard was nearly empty. Only one figure remained. Braden. He held a drone prototype of his own, still clunky, still flawed. But his eyes were focused. And when Ellis stepped beside him, they stood without speaking, two boys once on opposite sides of a closed door, now standing on the same side of something new. Ellis finally broke the silence. "You ever think about how it started?" Braden nodded. "Yeah. My dad tried to force a system to work for me." Ellis smirked. "And now you're helping build one that works for everyone." Braden looked at him. "So what do we do next?" Ellis glanced up at the sky. "Now," he said. "We scale it." Together, they watched the final drone lift off. Not just into the sky, but into a world finally ready to see them. In a world that too often rewards last names over earned names, stories like this remind us what real brilliance looks like. Talent doesn't need a silver spoon, it needs a chance. And when we listen, when we truly see each other, we don't just change minds, we change systems. If you believe hard work should outshine wealth, if you believe genius can wear hoodies, not just Harvard sweatshirts, then hit that like button, drop a comment to show your support for young creators, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge the way the world works. Sparkles, let's lift voices that have been too often ignored. Because merit matters, and you can help make it heard.